All right, hey, good evening, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. This is your evening tropical update. We are still tracking Major Hurricane Beryl in the Central Caribbean Sea as the only real player in your Atlantic Basin this evening. We have been talking about Invest 96L, and while we're not going to completely quit tracking this, it does not look very good tonight, and I think it is still suffering greatly from the impacts of Beryl being nearby. So for now, this is going to be a rain and moisture surge for the Windward Islands, and folks there cleaning up from Beryl's destruction are going to have to deal with more rain in the next coming days. But for now, this is just something to keep an eye on, but it does not appear to be poised to develop anytime really soon. So the only player in town tonight is Major Hurricane Beryl. This is the latest in the National Hurricane Center as of 8 p.m. The storm is still a very powerful Category 4 hurricane. Maximum sustained winds are 150 miles per hour. That movement is a blistering pace, west-northwest at 22 miles per hour. Very, very fast for a storm of this magnitude and size. Last night, Beryl did become the only second Category 5 hurricane ever in the month of July. If you didn't see the Facebook updates, the storm achieved Category 5 at 11 p.m. last night after Hurricane Hunter data confirmed pretty convincingly that the storm had achieved that status. And then at 2 a.m., it was upgraded to 165 miles an hour. So not only is it the earliest forming Category 5 in the Atlantic Basin's history by over 2 weeks, beating Emily's record on July 17th, 2005, it's also now the strongest July hurricane on record because Emily only made it to 160 miles per hour. Beryl peaked at 165. We do believe that that was the peak of Beryl, and the storm has been weakening somewhat today. And again, I cautiously use that term because weakening from 165 to 150 is like saying the dump truck hit me only at 95 miles an hour instead of 110. You know what I mean? It's kind of a misnomer in a way. But satellite presentation has degraded from this morning. This was earlier this morning, clear eye, still had very cold cloud tops. But even by mid-morning, this is about 9 a.m., you could see that some dry air bands were beginning to entrain into the storm, and the western eye wall and CDO was beginning to erode fairly convincingly. And then as the day went on, Beryl's eyes become cloud-filled and much more ragged, and now has completely disappeared. However, in the last few frames, we see that intense burst of white and black cloud tops, even some pinks, have surrounded the eye once again overnight, indicating that Beryl is dealing with southwesterly wind shear. The winds out of the southwest have been picking up pretty quick. There's a very strong southwest wind in the Caribbean Sea this evening, and this is a kind of a low to mid-level wind, which is kind of undercutting the storm, which that kind of wind shear is very difficult for the storm to fight off. It can fight off upper shear a bit easier, especially a strong hurricane like Beryl, because of all the outflow aloft can kind of bulldoze its own path. But low-level wind shear that undercuts that outflow channel can really disrupt the storm, cause vortex tilt and all that kind of stuff. And Beryl is feeling those effects to some degree. However, that new cloud burst we just saw and burst of convection indicates that Beryl is fighting back against it, and it does have plenty of warm water still to work with, and overall upper-level outflow channels are still looking pretty good. So Beryl is going to fight tooth and nail for every point of intensity it drops. I want to be very clear that when you have a storm this strong, that is so much energy. They don't just wind down. Even if the shear picks up or the dry air picks up, if a storm is ragged and weak and already stumbling on itself and then it's introduced with shear, it can be a killer. But when you have a Category 5 hurricane, it doesn't just come down. You're going to have to beat this thing into submission. It's going to be going 12 rounds with the wind shear out there this evening. And RGB satellite also shows that you can see the deep southwest winds moving out of the Caribbean in this direction, and the cirrus outflow quickly trailing off as that upper trough's influence is now well away, but it's still pulling some mass away from Beryl. And the storm is still trying to plow ahead through all this mess here in the western side of the Caribbean Sea. So if we look at the future of Beryl, we do have an impact with Jamaica scheduled for tomorrow. By 2 o'clock this afternoon tomorrow, Jamaica is going to be experiencing a very bad time. Beryl is going to impact that island with Category 4 winds. You're going to be raked with the northern eye wall, and it's going to be a very bad time in Jamaica. It will be the worst storm Jamaica has seen probably since at least 2007, if not even further back from there. Jamaica was hit multiple times in 2004, 5, and 7 with Ivan, Emily, Bradley and Dean. And then if you go back in the further annals of history, you have Allen in 1980. So Jamaica, no stranger to some really big hurricanes, but Beryl is the first one they've had in quite a while, and it's going to be a very hard hit. So again, when we're talking about this weakening and wind shear, like you got to remember, this is still a incredibly powerful hurricane, and it's going to absolutely smack Jamaica as it moves through. And that blistering west-northwest speed at 22 miles an hour and being on that northern side means you have to kind of add 20 miles an hour to the winds because of the forward speed of the hurricane. So please take it seriously in Jamaica. All preparations need to be done tonight, because by tomorrow morning, the tropical storm force winds are going to be on station, and it's going to be a rough time there. Cayman Islands also under hurricane warnings tonight. They will be getting it on Thursday morning. And then by Thursday afternoon, Beryl clears the Jamaica and Cayman Islands area and then moves into this area before Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Now, we still believe that Beryl, with high confidence, is going to hit the Yucatan somewhere. It looks like Cozumel is probably, the more likely target right now, but somewhere along the Yucatan Peninsula, and then it's going to dump into the Gulf of Mexico Friday afternoon. At that point, Beryl will be feeling a change in steering flow. The ridge of high pressure pushing this steadily to the west-northwest for many days is going to begin to slide off the coast of Florida, and this is going to change the steering pattern a little bit, and it's going to open a weakness across the southeast or the southwest Gulf of Mexico and potentially allow Beryl to turn more northward. Now, where exactly that turn happens and how that turn executes is definitely based on multiple things. Number one, how far north Beryl is when it gets here. Is it already on the northern edge of the cone? Is it on the southern edge of the cone? And how strong is Beryl? The stronger the hurricane, the more likely it wants to turn northward. If we kind of draw this out real quick, there's basically going to be a trough sitting over the central U.S., and then the high is going to be offshore. So there you have this weakness right here, and the hurricane wants to turn towards that weakness. But this interaction is like if you put a magnet on the table, right? And then you had another magnet of, opposite polarity, so it attracted it. You know how like when you have a magnet, it kind of will start feeling it, it'll start moving towards it, but it's barely. And then like if the magnet's not close enough, it can't feel it at all. But then if the magnet gets close enough, it just snaps to it. That's kind of how this dance works, right? As the storm approaches the Yucatan, you have this kind of magnetic pull from the trough, depending on how strong the trough is. And this interaction is like, okay, it kind of feels it, and then it gets sucked up into the trough. So you have to be careful, because it could also never feel the trough. The trough's a little weaker, Beryl's a little weaker. They never quite interact. It's like if you can get the magnet close to their magnet, but at some point, until it gets close enough, it's never going to move. That's kind of what we're dealing with. So that's why you see a big fanning out of the spaghetti models, as we call them in the track, where a lot of them push it straight into Mexico. Some hook it hard into Louisiana. That's why we're seeing that, is because there are multiple options here on the table. But what we do know is that Beryl is going to steadily and hopefully weaken over the next couple of days as that wind shear picks up across the central Caribbean. It interacts with Jamaica, and then it eventually interacts with the Yucatan Peninsula. We have all that, to believe that by all counts, this should be slowly ticking down. Again, as I said, this is going to be a heavy fight to get this storm to weaken, though. And from there, we have to watch trends. As we look at tonight on the Weather Nerd satellite presentation, with the European tracks overlaid, the ensemble tracks overlaid, Beryl is tracking a bit north of most model expectations. It's definitely on the northern edge of the guidance, and it has been for some time. It started off a little more on the southern side of the track, and now it's kind of becoming more northward of the track envelope. So this is owed to Beryl's intensity wanting to turn more poleward. Again, stronger hurricanes want to generally move more northward than weaker storms do. So that's what Beryl is trying to do, and that's why it's ever so slightly tracking north of expectations. This is bad news for Jamaica, because again, this looks like this is going to come almost right over there. It might bend a little bit more to the south at the last minute, but it's going to be very close, and it's close enough for major impacts. In the future, again, of that does, we look at the Super Ensemble on Tomer Berg's website. Once again, we have this wide range of options about where the storm could be. But my bet right now is to be betting on the more northern side of this envelope, because we know that Beryl is already very strong. It's stronger than a lot of models believe it is. And Beryl is also going to be in a position where it may not be as weak. and it's already tracking a bit north of expectation. So I think those two things lend some credence that I think that you're looking at the landfall somewhere around Cozumel, and then this very well could slip across the Yucatan. And how exactly it tracks across the Yucatan matters too. Does it just graze the very tip of the Yucatan for a few hours? Does it drive right through the heart of it? I mean, that does matter as well as far as the intensity goes. I think that Beryl will either be a strong tropical storm or a weak hurricane when it gets across the Yucatan on Friday afternoon, and then very well could be turning towards Texas and or Louisiana. So again, if I was in central Louisiana, like say, I don't know, maybe Morgan City, all the way over to Cameron and then down to Houston and Galveston and Corpus Christi and Brownsville, I would absolutely be watching for some potential impacts, and those impacts would be this weekend if you got them. So I don't think it's going to curve much further west or east, and if it did, it would probably be so weak from interacting with a trough that it would be more of a sloppy tropical storm at that point. So, Mississippi, Alabama, Pensacola, maybe, of course, New Orleans, keep an eye on it. But I don't think this is your storm. I think, again, those goalposts are probably somewhere around this area, but folks in this region need to be preparing for the potential of a hurricane. I mean, as a legitimate hurricane on your doorstep sometime this weekend, potentially. Again, it could just push into Mexico. It could hit right around the border, in Brownsville and South Texas. There's a lot of options here. But again, Corpus Christi, Port Arnasis, Rockport, Houston, Galveston. I mean, there's a lot of potential outcomes here that gives y'all some pretty nasty weather as this moves in. So that's pretty much what I got for you guys this evening. Again, you can see the official track here overlaid right in the middle of the multi-model consensus. Again, there's a wide range of options here, but most models pull this across the Yucatan and then move it into somewhere in Texas, or maybe hook it a bit harder towards northern Texas. And again, the intensity models do bring this down steadily, but it's going to be a fight, and it's probably overdoing how fast Beryl is actually going to weaken. So that's what I got for you guys this evening on your tropical update. Again, I will be traveling to Florida tomorrow, so I don't know if I'll have a video, but we will have all the updates on Facebook I can possibly give you guys. So we will be tracking this every step of the way, and I will be bringing my software to record while I'm on vacation for the holiday weekend. So I will have that with me as well. So you'll hear from me again, just maybe won't be tomorrow, depending on how things shake out. So that's what I got for you guys this evening. As always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.